Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Arrow, Season 3, Episode 14, The Return, and I'm gonna be honest, guys, I've really loved the past 4 episodes of Arrow. They have been completely awesome and just consistently amazing. It has been consistently great, and this episode, though, I don't know, guys, it just didn't do it for me. This episode was boring, I'm gonna be honest, and I know you guys are gonna say, well, this episode was awesome. How can you have said that? This episode, the problem with this episode was, first of all, there are not many things going on in this episode. There's not. There aren't many scenes going on, and it's kind of a all over the place episode. And when you have an episode where the flashbacks are better than your main storyline, yeah, your episode has a clear problem because I'm not usually into the flashbacks, and I wasn't in this episode. I wasn't really into the main storyline, and I know Slade returned and things like that, but it was really just a been there, done that storyline. I will admit, though, there were some scenes in this episode that were really good. It was in no means a boring episode. It just was not as good as the past 4 episodes have been. It just was a little bit draggy for me, and just a little bit boring, I have to say. I was not into this episode, really, but let's just get into it. So, if my review is not that long, it's just because I don't really have too much to say about this episode. A lot of this episode just felt very been there, done that. But I like the way it starts, because we start with Oliver and Thea training on the island of Lian Yu, and Oliver's surprised with Thea's skill level, wondering what Malcolm exactly trained her in Quartel Maltese, because she's actually very good with skill, and it kind of felt a little out of place to me, definitely, because last week she seemed very much not skilled at all and just unsure about doing this. And Thea's character just fell out of character in this episode. I don't know what it was. And later that night, they are discussing Oliver's first time on the island over 5 years ago, and she asks Oliver if he ever wondered if he'd return to Starling City while marooned. And we then go to the past, and I have to say, as I said, the flashbacks in this episode were the best part of this episode, because we actually get to see when Oliver finally returned to Starling City, and Oliver, Mazeo, and Argus are Starling City, and Argus are Starling City looking at the Omega virus. And Amanda Waller thinks an auction will occur through an old Queen family partner named Kang and needs Oliver's intel on him to bust the auction. However, Oliver can't let anyone know that he's back in his hometown, otherwise Amanda will kill him. And Mazeo later puts a tracker on Kane's car as they follow him. Mazeo and Oliver see Thea Queen leave Queen Consolidated's building, and I thought that was interesting to see. We get to see some of the stuff here, but I will say a lot of stuff in this episode just felt very all over the place. The flashbacks kind of felt all over the place as well. Because then back in present day, this I loved. I love the stuff with Laurel in the episode. That was by far the best stuff. Because Laurel finds Lance drinking alone in a bar, mourning Sarah's death. As we know, he almost collapsed out of his seat last week, just finding out about what happened to Sara. And I was very interested in seeing how he was going to react to it. And basically, he is heartbroken over it, obviously. And when the bartender cuts Lance off, Laurel gives him a ride home. And I really did feel bad for Lance, I have to say, in this episode. They did a lot of stuff there that really got me to care more for him. And I still love Lance's character, but you gotta feel bad for the guy. I mean, as I said, the worst thing that he could have found out is that his daughter's dead. I mean, all this time he just thought she was missing, and he's already going through so much stress in his life, and now just knowing that she's dead is just something else for him to worry upon. Something else for him to be upset about, and just, he doesn't get a break. This guy does not catch a break, so over on the island, Oliver wakes from a bad dream. Thea comforts him, but asks that Oliver never told her about Sarah's death. And Oliver discusses her connection to Slade while on Lian Yu, and then excused himself to take a walk. And I like that he talked about what was going on with Sara and Slade, because I really loved those flashbacks. And I have to say, I've not been too fond of the flashbacks this season. While this has been Arrow's strongest season, in terms of storyline, the flashbacks this season have just been kind of boring just because of how good they were last year. Last year, they were totally interesting with Slade and Sara and all of them. That was really awesome. This year, it's more just like procedural stuff, and I don't exactly care as much. So, that walk leads him right to Slade's Argus prison beneath the island surface, which, of course, Oliver's keeping him. And Oliver walks to Slade's cell, but finds that Slade isn't in it. And Slade has escaped. My problem here is that I did not like the way they handled this. What I wanted to see is Slade escape and have Team Arrow have to, basically have Team Arrow have to try to stop him. That's what I thought we were going to see. But no, we barely even see Team Arrow in this episode. Diggle's not in this episode. Felicity's not in this episode. Roy's in the episode, but it just didn't work in my opinion. It really didn't. I was not into it because of this. I would have wanted them to handle this completely differently, and they did, and I just did not like the way it was handled. I understand that Oliver's the main character, and he has to get the most focus, but this episode could have just been Oliver just telling Thea flashbacks, and it would have been a lot more interesting than just a repeat of Season 2. That's literally what this felt like. This just felt like a repeat of Season 2. It didn't feel like anything new, and I understand that a lot of superhero shows do that. I would have been fine if this would have brought something new to the table, but it really didn't. It literally just felt like watching Season 2 again, and Oliver's rushing out of the prison to find him. He finds Thea and says they have to leave the island immediately, and I just didn't like the way this was going. I don't like it that they're rehashing this villain, because we had enough of him in season 2. I mean, Malcolm Merlyn was the main villain in Season 1, but they've completely redeemed him, and they've made him such a better character since then. With Slade, I don't really think we need to see him anymore. I mean, he was in the prison, and I knew we were going to see him again, but because of everything that's going on now, we don't need to see him right now. I would have, don't get me wrong, I like Slade's character. I do. I think Slade is a good character. I just don't really want to see him now just because of the fact that there's so much else going on that I care about. So, Oliver sees a call from Malcolm, who reveals that he freed Slade from his cell, and that's huge that Malcolm did that. I mean, basically Malcolm did this to make Slade a bigger threat, and with Slade on loose on the island, he hopes that Oliver will rediscover his killer instinct and thus be more ready for Ra's al Ghul. Now, that I loved. I have to say that. That was awesome to see. That Oliver had to make a decision of, does he really want to kill Slade? Does he want to go back to killing someone? And I was very interested in seeing if he was actually going to do it. That if he was actually going to kill Slade. But I knew he wasn't going to. I knew that he was not going to kill Slade, because every time that Oliver thinks about possibly killing somebody, he doesn't do it. And I'm really not sick of that storyline. I do like it overall. I don't want him to kill anyone until he kills Ra's al Ghul. I'm going to be honest, guys. I want the person he kills to be Ra's al Ghul. I don't want him to kill anybody else. So, as much as I like that they introduced this, I don't want someone to have to make him kill someone. I want him to do it himself, which I think is a lot better than Malcolm Merlyn convincing him. I just don't really know if I like that. So, basically, back in the past, Oliver follows Thea. She visits the empty graves of Oliver and his father, because, of course, at that point, everyone thought Oliver was dead, and Oliver's watching Thea buy drugs from a dealer who approaches her, and the deal is busted, however, when Tommy shows up and warns Thea from growing up too fast. And it was great to see Tommy again. I really like seeing that. But to me, it kind of just felt kind of gimmicky, I do have to say. It just felt to me like, oh, we need to bring somebody back. We're going to bring Tommy back. I understand they did that, but it just kind of felt gimmicky. It really didn't. An episode that had a huge return with Slade, I just felt like Tommy was just kind of stretching it. So Tommy scorns Thea for her drug use and party-going, warning her not to go to his birthday party that night. And in the present, Oliver uncovers an old weapon cache on the island. He hands Thea a gun, but is suddenly ambushed by Slade. Slade knocks him out and tells Thea that it's nice to see her again. And he takes Oliver and Thea to his former cell. When Oliver awakes, he says that he has no desire but to kill either of them. And he says that he's going to let the two of them rot in his cell, just like Oliver left him. And I do have to say, that's really strong that Slade is doing this. But all this felt like to me is just stuff that they can do later. There's stuff to do now. There's things to do. We don't really have time for Slade. I understand they're keeping Slade alive so that way we can see him again. But to me, it just seemed like they had him on the show just so we could have a return from Slade, because everyone wanted it. So Slade counters by telling Thea that Oliver's keeping more secrets about Sara from her, but with that question dangling, he leaves. And in the past, Oliver breaks into Queen Consolidated. He hacks into the company's computer directory to find the Omega auctions details in Kang's files, and he downloads the files, and Felicity enters the room. And Oliver ducks and hides as Felicity approaches the computer, and I did not like this because I thought the first time that Oliver and Felicity met was in Season 2, when she saved him, basically. I thought that was the first time they met, but apparently that's not the case here. So I don't really know if I exactly like that. For the first time you met Felicity was here. I don't know if I exactly like that, and especially because that's the only scene we see of Felicity in this episode, I just was not a fan of that. So Oliver sneaks to Tommy Merlin's birthday party across town, and in disguise, Oliver sees Tommy flirt with Laurel, and he also sees Thea crash the party, and Tommy tells her to leave, but she ignores him. She then meets her drug dealer, who slips her something that will keep her awake, and of course, of course, with Thea, she was doing drugs at this time, so Oliver ambushes the drug dealer, warns him to leave Thea alone. The dealer recognizes Oliver, tries stabbing him, but Oliver grabs the knife and kills him first. So, on present-day Lianyu, Oliver and Thea work on an escape plan, and Thea asks Oliver what he's still hiding about Sara, but Oliver dodges with a question with an idea. He realizes that the cell's bars are only narrow enough to contain a grown man's arms, but not a smaller female like Thea's. And he then dislocates Thea's shoulder with permission so she can reach the cell's release button just a few feet away, and the cell opens and the two escape to reach Slade before he reaches their plane. So essentially, this was kind of pointless. I have to say, this whole storyline just felt like pointless. It just felt like we're gonna bring Slade back, so here we go. This could have easily just been Oliver thinking of things and just wanting to tell Thea more. I would have enjoyed this a lot more if it was just Oliver telling Thea about Sara. If that's what it would have been, I would have loved that, because I love episodes that are just about finding things out about characters. And this episode could have been that, but it wasn't that. It had to have this whole Slade thing that I just thought in the end was just kind of pointless. It really was, because it goes nowhere. I'm going to say that right now, guys. This goes nowhere, because we'll then go back to the flashbacks, because back at Tommy's party, the police arrive to investigate the drug-dead dealer's body. Leading the police is a drunk Lance, who's a much meaner version of himself, and it was interesting to see Lance, like, so not laid back. Like, he's usually so laid back and just so nice and everything. So it's interesting to see Lance kind of being a jerk, and he finds Laurel at the party, and he's really being a douchebag here, but again, he's drunk, so he starts criticizing her for hanging around fat cats and playboys, and when Oliver rendezvous with Mazeo, I really feel that the only reason he was so, rude to her is because he's a father that's concerned. That's why he's doing that. So when Oliver rendezvous with Mazeo asks Oliver what he was thinking. Mazeo says he can't interact with his family, and if he really wants to help them, he'll focus on stopping the Omega virus auction. So Oliver ignores him and leaves to be his loved ones, and in the present, Oliver and Thea race to Slade. They hit a snag, however, when they trip one of Oliver's booby traps, and as they rest, Thea asks Oliver again what secret about Sara he's holding from her, and Oliver then tells Thea that it was she who, under Malcolm's drugs, killed Sara. And that's huge that he finally told her, because of course Thea did not know that she was the one that killed Sara, and I am happy that he told her. But it just kind of felt like, okay, like it didn't have really any impact on me because Slade convinced him to, and if Slade would have convinced him to, and if Oliver would have just told her, like in confidence, I would have enjoyed that a lot more. If he would have just told her when it was just the two of them having a conversation. If the beginning of this episode with them having a conversation with the whole episode, I would have loved this episode probably. But the way things were handled, I just did not like. I don't know what it was, guys, but the way things were handled, I just thought were really badly written, in my opinion. I don't really know what it was, but a lot of it I just thought was really badly written and really wasn't a fan of it. So Thea's having a meltdown, but Slade interrupts with an ambush, and she doesn't even get a chance to react to this, which was really annoying, because of course we have Slade here, so Thea doesn't have a chance to react to it. And he puts a gun at Thea's head, but she disarms him, and Oliver then tackles Slade. The two duke down the woods. Thea joins the fray. It's an all-out brawl. It just all felt pointless to me, because I'm like, there's no way he's gonna kill Slade. There's just no way. So the two get the better of Slade. Thea draws the gun on him. She resists the temptation, however. Thea and Oliver lock Slade back in his cell, and I knew that he wasn't going to kill Slade. I knew that he wasn't going to do it. So Slade warns Oliver that Malcolm has corrupted Thea and that she truly is lost, and I just didn't care, guys. I'm sorry. I know that this was I know some of you could say this was a very well done scene. It was a very well done arc. I understand that. I just didn't really care just because it just felt pointless to me. Having Slade back just made everything just feel winded down and just been there, done that. The fight scene between Oliver and Slade just reminded me of the season 2 finale. It really did. Plus, we had so much focus on Slade last year that I don't really feel he needs to be there right now. And I know I keep saying this, but it's true. He doesn't need to be there. He had all this focus. Now we need to get some more focus on Ra's al Ghul, because we're not getting a lot. And I understand why, because we're preparing for Ra's al Ghul and Oliver to fight. I understand that. But we're not really getting a lot of build-up to that, and I definitely want to see more of that with the League of Assassins and things like that. Next week, it looks like we're getting a lot more of that, which I definitely want to see. So in the past, Oliver returns to Queen Manor. He sits down in the family living room, watches the video file left for him by his dead father, and this was a really well done scene. This I really liked. Oliver's father tells him that if Oliver's watching this, he is dead, but the post-summits video asks Oliver to save Starling City from the corrupt men who rule it and right his past wrongs, and Oliver knows that he must put emotional needs aside and fight for his city instead, and he leaves for the auction. So this was basically when Oliver decided to become a vigilante, and I like that we found that it was his father that told him to be a vigilante. My only thing here is now I feel like we don't need flashbacks in the show anymore, because now we know why Oliver became a vigilante. What else do we need to know? Like, it just seems pointless to me, and everything about this episode, I don't know what it was, guys, but everything just fell out of place. And across town, the Omega auction takes place with Mazeo watching, but Mazeo is discovered is about to be killed until Oliver saves him at the last minute. The auction turns into a riot, but Oliver and Mazeo manage to subdue the auction's criminals and recover the virus, and Oliver thinks that their mission's over, but Amanda Kim corrects him, and then a military general enters the room and says that he must tell Oliver some bad news back in China. The general assures, however, that once Oliver's debriefed, the general will let him go wherever he pleases, and across town, Tommy runs into Laurel on the streets, and he then asks her out to dinner, which she hesitantly accepts, and back in the present, Laurel finds her father at Sara's grave, and he asks Laurel how she could break their special bond by holding such a secret from him, and I thought this was a really well done scene. And I like that he said that, because, you know, he doesn't know exactly why she is hiding this from him. And he says he doesn't know how he'll live with the betrayal and leaves Laurel to herself. Which, honestly, I definitely saw this happening. Okay, with Thea reacting to Oliver being the arrow, not really being shocked, I can understand that. Him reacting to Laurel taking over for Sara, I can understand that, why he didn't have much of a reaction. But this, yeah, I think she should have told him. I mean, I knew that he wasn't going to react happily. I knew he was going to be crushed by this. First of all, we know he has a lot of heart conditions and things like that. He almost died, so this is not going to end well for Laurel. I just know it's not going to, and it's really sad because Laurel's having such a good arc, and I really hope that Laurel overcomes this. I really hope she does not go back to drinking and things like that. I heard some people say that they think that's going to happen. I really don't think that's going to happen to Laurel. I think that Laurel, they completely changed her character. I think she's a lot stronger now, and all she needs to do is just tell Lance why she did this to him. So then we get to the last scene, which was awesome, but once again, guys, it just felt kind of pointless. Across town, Oliver and Thea return to their apartment. Thea says that she's fine, but Oliver warns Thea from telling anyone, especially Laurel, that she knows that she is Sara's murderer, and I like that he told her not to tell anyone that, because no one really knows. So Malcolm then shows up. Thea bombards Malcolm and asks how he could let her kill Sara, and she's obviously pissed at him because she already wanted nothing to do with him, but now she wants nothing to do with him. And Malcolm tries using Ra as an excuse, but Thea's not listening. She's like, I don't care what you have to say. I killed Sara and you didn't tell me, and she's freaky. Especially because he's trying to be her father. It's just very suggestive what he's doing. And I think with Malcolm is that he did not want to tell her because he know how she'd react, but at the same time, it's just like, why didn't you tell her? So she says she'll continue working with Malcolm to stop Roz, explaining that she'll be his partner, ally, and soldier, but she'll never be his daughter, and that's how the episode ends. Now, let me talk about why I felt this episode was kind of irrelevant overall, because if you guys notice, I didn't really like the episode very much, and I'm going to say this right now. If Slade had not been in this episode, the events in this episode would have stayed the same. If Oliver just revealed these things to Thea, and that would have been the episode, fine. I would have liked that. They did that with Sara last year. It was an amazing episode. If you remember, they did that episode with Sara where they just revealed her past, and it was amazing. If they would have done that in this episode, I would have loved that, and they didn't do that. They had to bring Slade into it, and if Slade was not involved in this episode, it still would have been the same. Everything would have been the same. Nothing would have changed. I just felt like this episode was nothing. It really felt like nothing to me. It felt just like an episode that they put in because they needed Slade back and they wanted Slade to be back on the show. So they just had him in here for this episode, and it wasn't gonna make sense to put him in this episode, but they had him in here anyway. And I do want to talk about Laurel because I did really like that stuff with Laurel. Laurel and Lance. I mean, I really do feel bad for Lance, and I also feel bad for Laurel because I mean, she held this secret from him for a while, and I knew it was gonna have a huge impact on her. I definitely knew that. I knew he wasn't gonna react in a way that was good, and I knew it wasn't gonna end well for her at all. The flashbacks now, I don't know why we should continue the flashbacks because now we know why Oliver decided to be a vigilante. And I just don't see the point of the flashbacks now. I really don't. And we're not getting much to the flashbacks, I have to say. All we really got in the flashbacks in this episode was why Oliver decided to become a vigilante. And I just have to say, I'm not really enjoying the flashbacks. I haven't really talked about them because I haven't really cared. The season of Arrow has been fantastic overall. I don't count the flashbacks as part of the episode. I just count it as something extra unless it connects to the episode, which this one did. And I have to say the flashbacks were a lot more interesting than what was actually going on because the Slade stuff just felt like rehash from season 2. That's all this episode felt was. Just rehash from season 2. Rehash from season 2. That fight between Oliver and Slade. Rehash from season 2. I know that Oliver's not going to kill anyone until he kills Ra's al Ghul. Because if he would have killed Slade in this episode, I would have been pissed out of my mind. This would have been an epic rant. I'm going to be honest, guys. If he would have killed Slade, I would have been pissed out of my mind. Because he didn't... Let's think of people he could have killed that he didn't kill. He didn't kill Slade, which he should have killed Slade in season 2, but he didn't, which I can understand why he wants to keep him alive. Plus, the show's runner wants to keep him alive. I can understand that. He didn't kill Ra's al Ghul because he didn't get a chance to, because of course he died and was sacrificed again and was brought back to life again. There's a lot of people he could have killed, and he did not kill them. And he didn't kill Brick. He didn't kill all those other villains they've had. There are a lot of villains that they had that I thought he would have killed, and he didn't kill them. So I definitely feel like now he needs to kill Ra's al Ghul. He's gonna kill Ra's al Ghul. I know he's gonna do it. I'm calling it right now. Ra's al Ghul's gonna be the first person that he kills. I know that right now, and I'm calling it. But overall, guys, this episode was okay. I thought it was good overall. Definitely not the strongest episode ever. We had a lot more strongest episodes. Honestly, I'd probably give this episode like a B-. I really would. I think this episode had a lot of really good stuff in there. It did have some really good scenes overall. But other than some really good character development from Laurel and things like that, and, basically, just, I don't know what I'm trying to say. They had some really good stuff there overall with Laurel and Lance. I like that. But basically, if Slade had not been in this episode, everything still would have been the same and nothing would have changed. So that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Did you feel the episode was as irrelevant? It just felt out of place for me. Also, we had nothing with Diggle, nothing with Felicity, and I would have wanted... Here's what I would have wanted them to do with Slade. Have Slade be a threat to Team Arrow and see how they handle this. Because as they said, Oliver said that they're going to be fine. So I want to see how Team Arrow handles this. I don't just want to focus on Oliver and Thea and not see Team Arrow, because that's one of the best parts of the show is the dynamic between Team Arrow. Not seeing this episode was kind of just ruins the show. It does. It's one of the best parts of the show, and it ruins the show when they're not in the show. I love Diggle. I love Felicity. I love Roy. I love Laurel, and we didn't see any of them in this episode, we saw Laurel, but that was it. And this is my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you guys saw this episode. And I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of The Americans. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.